Hi, this is Jeff Gober, and we welcome you to Disney Insights. Thanks for joining us today. I'm way overdue for reviewing Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets. There's several reasons for that, but I'm excited to share my thoughts on this remake. Not just for the coaster, but for the Muppets being in the park. And that's not all that's going on at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Monsters Incorporated is in big build mode. Everything is in scaffolding and iron girders going vertical. We'll talk about the approach to this land and how guests are going to experience it. And then I'll share my emotional impressions of the new Magic of Disney animation courtyard, which now has an opening date of September 14th, 2026. All this and more, plus a good churro that I found in the park that makes this whole thing really exciting. Actually, this is going to be a fun podcast. There was one moment not so fun, but the most of it was really quite fun. So join us for this Muppets Rock and Roller Coaster review, Monsters Incorporated Buildout, and Magic of Disney animation opening date. This podcast is produced by myself and Performance Journeys, which offers training, development, consultant support to organizations that are big and small and entrepreneurs, new and established. With a wide variety of training resources and long time in the trench experience, we offer workshops, online learning, coaching, consulting, and so much more to organizations that want to really take organizational excellence to the next level. So check us out at performancejourneys.com. As with our podcast, be sure to check out our website, disneyinsights.com, where we offer key points, photos, videos, links, and more. In today's discussion, we're going to have several images and some links that will link you to what's going on in the park. Note that YouTube carries now our podcast, and we'll have a complete POV of the rock and roller experience. So please subscribe to the Disney Insights YouTube page, as it's going to be more a part of our social media strategy moving forward. Again, anytime you can share a positive rating, review, referral to others, hey, that is so appreciated. Well, I got over to Disney's Hollywood Studios on a very rainy day. I was going to meet up with my friend Brian, but before he arrived, I thought, I'm going to go check out what's happening over at Monsters Incorporated Buildout. Now, to do that, you stop by the location right nearby, Ice Cold Hydraulics, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get one of those savory churros that they have. But no, they didn't have any churros there. So that was a little on the side of disappointing. They were in the process of making more, come back in 10 minutes, that type of thing. I didn't end up doing that. My eye was really quite drawn to the considerable work going on in the new Monsters Incorporated area. From the parking lot out when you park, and from a few streets around the studio, you can actually see the Monstropolis factory kind of coming up out of the ground, which will house the new coaster. And that construction has gone considerably vertical. Indeed, it is included in that is the actual coaster system itself being incorporated or built into the system, or into the in construction, being added at the same time that the building infrastructure is actually being created. It's interesting that the height of the construction so far, no one can quite make out yet the flattened A-frame that is kind of signature to the factory. But I can kind of see how the centerpiece is becoming more vertical than the corridor pieces around it. It's going to have quite a bit of height for it's a coaster attraction. And like Rock and Roller Coaster, which you don't really kind of see, they kind of block out the section which is the coaster. But that coaster building is quite enormous as well. So it's not surprising, Space Mountain is another example of this, that you're going to have a pretty big, sizable building for a coaster attraction like this. Now, from Grand Avenue, which is the street you walk on when you go from, Star Tours or ABC Commissary all the way out to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, That's Grand Avenue. And from there, you can see that every building that remains in the former Muppet courtyard has scaffolding on it. I say that remains because there was a Studio One building that used to have retail in it, and that has been flattened and pulled out completely. Additionally, permits have been pulled for what will be the Glob Theater, which is the former Muppet Vision Theater. Curious, though, that the clock from the original Muppet Vision building seems to remain, and actually, if you look at the visual, it will be in there as well. So, but every building completely around that, the old Pizza Rizzo, the old Mama Melrose's, everything, the restrooms, everything has scaffolding around it, and they are very busy kind of reforming and reshaping what that thing is going to look like. It's still going to be the larger area that you see, all leading out to the factory. But when completed, Monstropolis will pick up after the events of the original film. So when you enter this experience, you're going to be welcomed like guests or humans into the Monster City for a cultural exchange celebration called Human, Human. That's not the only acronym we have in this podcast today. Imagineering has gone wild with acronyms, I guess. That acronym, Human, is humans understanding monsters are nice day. So it's actually, it sounds familiar to other open house attraction experiences that have been used in theme park rides and so forth, to include actually Monsters Incorporated Laugh Floor. That's an open house as well. And so you're kind of being invited to this and being welcomed, and we want you to see what it's like to visit Monstropolis, something of that nature. As mentioned in an earlier podcast, I very much doubt we're going to see the coaster in 2027. Maybe the very, very, very end, right at the holidays. But it's still possible to see the front area in the latter part of the same year. D23 has, in August, coming up in just 1 month from now, it has an opportunity to share a lot of details regarding the whole suburban section. To include what kind of restaurant is going into Pizza Rizzo, the name of and description of the show going into the Glob. So we got details yet to come into all of this. Also, with the expected gate up in front as you kind of enter that section, I don't perceive that Grand Avenue will be changing. People have said that would be. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think it will be morphed into part of that land. I think that's the segue into that land. And nor do I expect the ice cold hydraulics. If you know what I'm talking about, this is a new Coke stand that was built out from Baseline Tavern, which Baseline Tavern is also kind of that part of Grand Avenue. Those new additions, I don't think they're going to be all changed into something Monstropolis. In fact, there's a mural on the side of the ice cold hydraulics building near the seating area, which shows a woman enjoying her soda at the beach. It's very Californian in style. It was just added not so long ago. But it's very Californian in style, as is Grand Avenue. I know that because used to have a client, and I spent the better part of a year working with her off of Grand Avenue in downtown Los Angeles. So it's a location I'm very familiar with, and I've spent a good deal of time with the clients, with clients a few years ago. In passing, on my way back toward the front of the park, I noted a new meet and greet area for Disney Junior across from the ABC commissary. I'll try to include a photo of it in the Disney Insights thing. It's not far from the Mickey meet and greet. Again, it's across from ABC. This is going to be the new home of Sophia the First and the Super Kitties. I don't think I've seen that costume character yet, but they're kind of being moved out of the Disney animation area. And they're kind of given their own little space here. It's not a big space, but I think it's good enough for what they're doing, and it's another element of meet and greet to be added on. By the way, uh, I met up with my friend Brian, and we actually ended up being sidetracked into one man's dream. I could do a whole podcast. I realized after I talked through Brian's questions about one man's dream, I realized I could do a whole podcast in one man's dream about that, and maybe we'll do that sometime in the future. And then we ended up going to Smuggler's Run before and we had met up in the Disney Animation Courtyard. But in going to Smuggler's Run, there was only a 15-minute standby wait, very short. And I all through the summer I've been looking at the times, and honestly, it just has not been nearly the hit that Rock and Roller Coaster has been starring the Muppets since it was open. I think it's a great addition. I think it's a far improvement from what was before. But somehow I think people have gonna I think the way Mandalorian Grogu came about, it was such a pounding at the beginning. I feel like people have kind of gone past the phase of that section. Notwithstanding the fact that you get to choose three very different places to go to, which includes uh, Coruscant, it includes the Cloud City, and then it also includes the moon of Endor, which isn't where the Ewoks are. It's actually where the remains and ruins of the not Star Destroyer, but Death Star are floating in the sky, and you kind of fight through and navigate through all that. I think it's very cool. Brian was doing it actually for the first time. He wanted to see what it was like. He felt like the whole thing was spinning very quickly in front of him, and but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that makes you want to kind of come back and sort it out and see it again. And I got him into the engine. If you want to be the one choosing where to go, you need to be not only in the engineering position, but you need to be in the right engineering side of the uh, ship. And but he got a little confused and ended up picking Coruscant when I think he wanted to pick Cloud City. Any rate, I think there's a lot of good going on in that attraction, but it has not had nearly the attention and excitement that we've seen for the Muppets. The Muppets have hit a slam run here, and it's been really good. Now, before I met up with Brian, I had a few minutes to enjoy a little more time in the magic of Disney animation courtyard. Um, and I had been there before, and I had taken some pictures, although I couldn't find the pictures. But I took some more pictures. I took some videos, and I really reflected on what I like about this. Intuitively, it works. It is a solid thing. We haven't even seen the animation experience that is going to open up on September 14th. You enter this section where once there was a studio archway, which I kind of miss, but what you find in its place is what is for me a very familiar icon. It's a somewhat humble sign compared to other studios in LA, but it is the Walt Disney Studios entry sign. It's kind of a low-laying sign. Of this the whole studio, when it was initially designed, remember, this came out of the profits of Snow White, which was the first full-length animated film. It was so successful, Walt took the monies and he hired architect Ken Weber to create this kind of state-of-the-art facility for animation, which, again, they were state-of-the-art. So just creating this kind of world with a studio, and it wasn't just a place for animators to draw. It was a full-out studio with sound stages and theaters and cutting rooms and editing bays and the whole thing. And we covered this earlier last year well, actually, at the beginning, I think, of this year when we talked about, maybe it was the beginning of last year when we talked about um, the 100th, no, 75th anniversary of the Walt Disney Studios, I think it is. Any rate, I have to go back to that. But um, any rate, Kem Weber, excuse me, he created this Art Deco, streamlined, modern style. Um, Even the font of all the buildings, the signage, is called Kem Weber font. And it is a distinctive and unique look. And there's a lot of this kind of red clay brick. Walt had gone into a lot of study, kind of wanted to bring in some of that. So those Southwest colors, because it was Southern California, and kind of bring that out. And so you get creams and kind of pottery reds, for lack of a better term. And all of the building colors now in this whole section and the brickwork all match what is in the Burbank studios. And with it comes a very park-like feeling. It has big shade trees. It has grass. It has foliage. It has flowers. It's a very stark contrast to when you previously went through the studio archway and you just came to a big plaza area, which had some palm trees, but really it was barren and sun soaked, and it was just kind of harsh in the summertime. This is very pleasing, especially for this time of year. In the center of all of this is a little park area with a shaded pergola. It has bench seating. All the benches are in a similar style to what you find in throughout the studio when you walk the grounds. Artists and actors always talk about shooting at the Walt Disney Studios. It is completely unlike any other studios, which looks very warehouse focused. And there are corners of it that is more warehouse focused. But wherever possible, Disney has put in a lot of landscaping, a lot of park-like feeling. It looks more like a college campus than it does a warehouse district. And so you get that park-like feeling. That pergola that I mentioned is a similar style to the one you see in the commissary. There's a big, large open area in the studio commissary area for people who want to eat their meal outside. Because people who are in a building all day often want to just get out and get the California sunshine. There is fencing around all of this that has small Mickey motifs that have been built into the design. As you approach the animation building, you see that on the ground are, well, first of all, there are characters scattered all around. And this builds off of the animation short, Once Upon a Studio. Now, I mentioned this to somebody the other day, and they hadn't seen this. This was really the only decent thing that came out of the 100 years of Disney anniversary. And it was a cartoon short made by the Disney Studios to celebrate all of the Disney animation that has come out of the studio. I mean, all of the Disney animation that has come out of the studio. And after all the animators have left for the day, Mickey and Minnie call out to Tinkerbell and they say, "Is it all clear?" And Tink says yes. And they say, "Okay, gather all the characters. We're going to go outside and take a group photo." And let me tell you, the group photo is massive in size. It just seems like 1,000 characters from every possible film, popular, old, new, not known. All of them show up for this photo. They all come together. Goofy's in charge of taking the picture. That's the wrong idea, but that comes together. I won't give away that. If you have not seen this short, it brings a tear to my eye every time I watch it. It is so wonderful. And the whole concept is that the characters here have scattered around, just like in Once Upon a Studio. And so you see them sitting around. You see Sir Hiss from Robin Hood, who's chatting with Frou Frou from Zootopia. You see Diablo, the Raven from Sleeping Beauty, and it kind of I don't know, kind of giving the eye to Cinderella's little blue bird friends who are chatting along and have their scarf covered around their head. You see Pua the pig from Moana in the grass, along with Thumper from Bambi. It's so sweet. They see Zazu. Well, actually, you see Lucifer on the cat, kind of perched on one of the walls, and she's kind of looking up at Zazu, who's wisely looking down at Lucifer from Zazu from the Lion King. So it's a cat and bird kind of thing. You see Jock and Gus of Cinderella together with Timothy. This is probably one of the hardest ones to see. It's kind of over by pointing toward the restrooms. And then you see Jiminy Cricket on some of the signage from Pinocchio. It just see all these little different characters, and it's such a surprise to see them. And you see characters. When's the last time you saw Sir Hiss celebrated in a Disney animated anything? So it's really just a lot of fun. Old characters, new characters, popular characters, less known characters. There was a store that was at the exit. Remember, all of this was once upon a time the entrance to the backlot tour so when you came off of this thing or before you went on it, there was a little store nearby, and that with COVID didn't open for years. It has reopened but has now become a baby care center, and it is so cute. There's a sign in it that says welcome, and what you see, again going back to that Once Upon a Studio, you see these pictures of Disney characters, but they're coming out of the picture, so to speak. In fact, you see Michael from Peter Pan, and why am I having a difficult time remembering Baby Pegasus. They're holding up the welcome sign, and then there's text that says on it, please enjoy our studio. Our artists are away. The babies should be napping, but they just want to play. They're crawling out of their frames to have a bit of fun, excited to say hello to your precious little one. And you see pictures of baby Hercules. You see Tiana, all these different Disney characters kind of emerging out of these pictures to say hi kind of to the little kids in the child care center. Just really cute how they have repositioned this attraction and made it kind of part of the whole studio thing. It's very clever. In front of the animation building, which I'll talk about in a minute, you see different footprints like you see in front of the Chinese theater, but instead of movie stars, you see animation stars. So in one, you see Beauty, and the next alongside of it is the Beast. There's a Rose in the one with Beauty, and so they're kind of together. In another section, you see Robin Hood and Little John side by side. You see Ursula with her tentacles kind of bordering the framework of the pavement. You see Hercules' hands and Pegasus' hoof prints. You see Mirabel on one side with Bruno on the other, both hands and feet. You see Pirate John Silver with a mechanical hand. With one is a regular hand, the other is that mechanical hand he has. You see Chicken Little's hands and feet, and they're framed in a sextagon. Remember, that was kind of part of that movie because they kind of come in and out of worlds through that sextagon. You see the Big Bad Wolf. You see even Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. You see all, and I haven't even named them all. And there's plenty of room for more. They're just fun. They're Instagrammable, and they're just really clever. And all of this is just leading up to the Roy E. Disney Animation Building, or it is parallel to the Roy E. Disney Animation Building. Now, the original building for animators was built way back by Ken Weber. This is not that building. What happened is when Michael Eisner came on board, he took the animators who were in a terrible slump with bad films at that point and moved them out to a warehouse in Glendale. I mean, literally a warehouse. But that's where they got their refooting and came out with great films like Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast and Lion King. And that success made Eisner promise them that they would have a brand new animation building, which would be on the opposite side of the studio lot. It is actually the space that Walt had originally, and I had a thing on this earlier, but there was a space dedicated for what Walt called a Mickey Mouse Park. That was where his original designs for a theme park came, and he realized he didn't have enough space. He also realized that Burbank wasn't really interested in doing a park, and so then he ended up moving to Anaheim. But in the absence of anything ever getting built there, they took that space and built what is the Roy E. Disney Animation Building. And Roy had an office in the Sorcerer Hat. You see the big Sorcerer Hat. So again, a kind of a touch to Disney's Hollywood Studios, because it had a big Sorcerer Hat in front of the Chinese Theater. This replaces it. It sparkles at night. It looks parallel or comparable to the Roy E. Disney Animation Building, and that's where you're going to see the new Magic of Disney Animation attraction. Now, around this whole courtyard, the Little Mermaid attraction, which empties out into this courtyard, it has now a sign attached to it that says the Studio Theater. So again, and it's got the old Hyperion style sign in the Kim Weber font. And then also on the other side of that Studio Theater is an old Walt Disney Studios Hyperion sign. Before they had the money and success from Snow White was built in what was known as the Hyperion Studios. And there they had a big sign up above the studio that said Walt Disney Studios, home of Mickey Mouse and the Silly Symphonies. And so you see that homage out there on that side, and then you come into the courtyard. On the opposite side of the courtyard is the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse Live in Soundstage 1. Last week I had a chance to talk a little bit about the Bluey experience at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and also the Toy Story experience in the Diamond Horseshoe. Both very strong, solid in their own way. There's a new Mickey Mouse Clubhouse Live show in Soundstage 1, and the whole front of that looks like a soundstage. It has the font and styling that matches the colors, that matches the studios. It's all together. You see movie posters up along both buildings, the Mermaid building and the Clubhouse building. And there's movie poster signage from old and new films like Tangled and Zootopia, but also Dumbo and Lady and the Tramp. Then in one corner you see what is Pluto's Corner, and it says that on the berm. It's painted, the curb is painted red, and it says Pluto's Corner. There's a fire hydrant nearby. Pluto would love a fire hydrant, right? And then there's signage that comes, this pole signage that shows the corner of Mickey Avenue and Dopey Drive. Walt did name the different drives, the different streets in the studio. And Mickey Avenue and Dopey Drive are legitimate streets. So that's named, but then there are also other signs that show, okay, here's where animation is, here's where ink and paint is, here's where editing is, and so forth. This whole signage was actually made originally for the Reluctant Dragon film, which was going to take Robert Benchley on a tour through the brand new studios that had been created. Hey, Walt knew how to maximize investments, right? And so they were going to show you a picture of this, and Robert Benchley was going to pitch the idea of doing this story called The Reluctant Dragon. And so he goes all through the studios and ends up getting a tour while he's trying to find Walt, and finally finds Walt, only to find out this cartoon has already been done, and Walt has, and you end up seeing the Reluctant Dragon film at the end of it. At any rate, the signage on the corner was made for it. Now, the signage points all in the wrong directions, not only here, but at the actual Disney studios. The ink and paint is pointed in the wrong direction than where it really was, and so forth. It was all done for the film, but it gives you kind of a sense, and it's still there today in Burbank And now it's here on the corner here. So it's very cool. By the way, as you're in this whole courtyard, there is a wonderful new soundtrack of Disney music played in kind of a classical light form. And it's old songs and new songs from Zootopia to Snow White. It's very lovely and very enjoyable to listen to. And I just, as I waited for my friend Brian, I had a chance to just sit on the bench, relax. The rains had passed. It was now cooler outside and a little more enjoyable. I was sitting in the shade, and I just had this moment to reminisce of my time when I had originally had an invitation to visit the studios when I was 16 for a tour. But then when I was in my graduate studies, I was trying to figure out what to do for my master's thesis. And I could not figure it out for me. I'd gone through about 2 or 3 different topics, and I hated them. And finally, my professor took me to the side and said, look, if you are going to get through this master's thesis, you got to choose a topic you absolutely love, because it's the only thing that's going. Your passion is the only thing that's going to get you through the struggle of finishing this thesis. At the same time, I had taken a job because I didn't need to be at campus. I'd finished all my classwork. I just need to finish my thesis. And so I took a job down in Tucson, Arizona. And I remember one Sunday morning kind of laying there in bed and thinking, what am I going to do for a thesis? I'm not going to finish this master's if I don't do a thesis, and I need a good topic. And I remembered the words of my professor saying, you need to choose something you absolutely love. I thought, well, the one thing I loved is Disney. And so I fashioned that thesis into a historical study of Disney educational media. And I wrote a letter to Dave Smith, the archivist. I knew that for me to do this kind of thesis, I would need to get into the archives and study what was done, study the films. Back then, most of those films could not be seen. There was no YouTube back then. If you were to see these films, you had to actually get a reel out and watch them. And so I wrote Dave Smith, and thankfully, Dave Smith gave me permission to come. I worked alongside Paula Sigmund, who was then with the archives, and I spent several trips and many days on each of those trips. And I remember the joy of really being on campus at the Disney studios. I remember the park-like feeling. Now, this was before digital cameras. You'd want to take a camera and take pictures, but I didn't want to look like a tourist. I knew I was there to do a specific thing, so I have no pictures of this, but I have memories. I have memories walking toward the Roy O. Disney building, where the archives at that time were located, and sitting down and going through original letters and memos that were created during that time that gave insight, interviews, listening to tapes of interviews of those who were involved with those projects, and ultimately crafting what would be my first book, which again was my master's thesis. And I just sat there in this courtyard with all of this symbolism around me that I knew it wasn't Burbank, but it felt so much like the original Burbank studios. And having this emotion of gratitude that I had been given that privilege to do that and to write that. And I've written several Disney books since, but I come back to that original thesis study that I did, and the joy of doing that in such a special place. I am so excited for when the magic of Disney animation opens, or maybe we should say reopen, because that was the original attraction in that space. But this is going to be a very different experience. There will be, in addition to a gallery and a studio store, the theater will be dedicated to showing Once Upon a Studio. I think they may do some special effects with that. You're going to have an off-the-page character meet and greet throughout the facility, very typical to what has been in that facility for many years. You're going to have an opportunity to draw animated characters with Olaf and seasoned veterans via the screen. And then there's a new section that is actually being added on, and from what I can tell, being taken out of the actual studio that was built back there, because at the same time they promised a new studio to animators in Burbank, they also promised that a bigger studio would be created for animators in Florida and that would be built out. And for a time they were there, not a very long time, before Florida Animation shut down. But a beautiful, impressive studio was built. They're taking a little bit, and originally, not originally, but at one point when that studio was built, there would be a big window, and the window would reveal the actual corridor of the studio, kind of the atrium of the studio where the artists were. And there were some components. It wasn't really much to look at. It didn't seem like you'd ever see artists just walking around. That corridor section is what seems to have been drawn to Wonderland, and will be part of that thematic area. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like. It's really more focused toward children. I'm not the biggest on character meet and greets and so forth, but I am excited to see a space that is dedicated to celebrating Disney animation. And I'm thrilled that I have a place that I could just sit on a bench and remember a real blessing in my life of being able to visit the Disney studios and work on my master's thesis. It has shaped my life in so many ways. At any rate, eventually Brian came. We went and did One Man's Dream. We did the Millennium Falcon, and then we came back to Rock and Roller Coaster. Now, for those who want no spoilers, you may want to miss this. However, in truth, if you don't get a sense of what you're seeing there, you may miss it all, because what happens fast. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you may not see it. Indeed, you may visit a few dozen times and still see new things you did not see before. This is an experience that has been dipped in details. Now, I show it entirely on my YouTube page, and you can click on it. The link is on DisneyInsights.com. But let me kind of give you a context for my own experience there. We got there 20 minutes prior to closing, which is probably the thing I would recommend to most people who do not have a lightning lane. If you're going to do a lightning lane thing, then great, because lightning lane will save you from being in a very long, slow line, sometimes slow. But the downside of that is you're going to miss some of the best details, I think, of some of the best videos in the show. So that's kind of the miss. So I would say if you're going to do it and you're not doing lightning lanes, get there about 20 minutes or even 5 minutes before closing, because after that, those who after 9 o'clock, those who have lightning lanes or part of VIP tours or DAS passes, they can't get in at that time. So then the line's going to move pretty quick. But for whatever reason, we got in there and the line did not move for about 10 minutes. And I finally said, okay, why don't we do this, Brian? Why don't we wait another 5 minutes? I needed to take a friend of mine who works at the studios, give him a ride home, who lives pretty close to where I am. And I didn't want him to wait until 10 o'clock for me to be available. He had worked a long shift. But I said, let's wait another 5. The line never moved. Now, I should have thought about why that line didn't move. And Brian's intelligently asked one of the cast members. Turns out it was a protein spill they had to clean up, so everything froze. And when we got out of the line, I said, I'll just go in the morning and do it. Brian had already done it. And I thought, well, I'll just go in the morning. in truth, the line actually got moving pretty quick after that. But here's so what I ended up. So we ended up not doing that. We ended up going to the Swedish Chef little trailer next door, and he got a root beer float. I got the Mayhem soft serve float with frozen Fanta, blue raspberry, soda, vanilla, soft serve, and pink cotton candy. It was not bad. It was actually great in the sense it was hot and humid, so I appreciated that aspect of it. But then I realized, okay, I'm going to come back the next morning because I want to do this podcast. Well, I came back the next morning, and I'm not even really thinking it through. I'm there just a couple of minutes before the gates even open. There are lines going all the way past the back security portion. It is full. The gates open. They go pretty quick, and I go up to the rock and roller coaster section entrance. But of course, if you're not staying as a resort guest, you're not going on the ride. So, which they queue up to an hour before, but they don't open, if I'm correct, until about 30 minutes in. And so, at any rate, I'm outside the entrance to Rock and Roller Coasters before you get to the upside down limo, and standing in line with others who are standing in line. And I'm sitting there thinking, why am I standing in this heat and waiting to go on this? This is not my favorite ride. I find the ride intense. I tighten up, and I feel a little claustrophobic. I always feel like the shoulder thing is never tight enough, and that it's going to open up, which it hasn't for the 50 times I've been on it. I was never an Aerosmith fan, and I find that the exterior portion of this queue is just horrible. This switchback to nowhere but cement. And I really am just sitting here thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And then I finally look at the clock, and it's only 20 minutes before it opens up for day guests like myself. I think, just hang in there. I'm going to do it. So, and by the way, I'm also thinking, why haven't I done this yet? And I'm remembering that actually a really wonderful individual gave me an invitation to go to a Club 33 preview before the whole thing opened up. But unfortunately, I was traveling on business at that time, and so wasn't able to do it. And so I kind of missed the opening and other business and events. I just couldn't get there to do it and find the moment. And I was trying to find others to do it with me, and nobody in my family wanted to do it. At any rate, travel and work had gotten in the way from attending. And now here it was, the middle of July, and I now finally getting in line to do this. The entrance in the building has been painted in grays. It now distinguishes itself from other studio buildings in the park. And of course, you have this big guitar, as well as the limo that's upside down, that is in totally psychedelic and true mayhem fashion. One of the piano keys that is at the base of the guitar is gold in recognition of Dr. Teeth. It looks colorful and it looks different. That's the cool thing. But the exterior queue is still horrible. There's some fans blowing air on you and a little bit of shade, but it is not exciting. And the line after we joined showed 45 minutes at this point. Fortunately, I got inside within 15 minutes, which wasn't bad. And as you enter, you see that everything has a very 70s look. Even the cast members are wearing Levi's and Paisley shirts, and I cannot tell you the number of Paisley shirts I had during that era. The first part of the interior is a circular rotunda, and it has videos of Muppets before there was some My Magic interaction kind of things. Instead, there are just these big videos that show up on these screens, and you see stars like Awkwafina, Wayne Brady, Yvette Nicole Brown, Darren Criss, Neil Patrick Harris, John Stamos, Weird Al Yankovic, all kind of appearing in many of these, Def Leppard, all appearing in these videos. It's a lot of material, actually. And even Elena Douglas, if you remember her, she's the manager of Aerosmith, who goes, okay, I need a super, limo. I need a super stretch limo. And she was so wonderful in that original video with Aerosmith. Well, she even does a vignette now as the manager of the Muppets. I haven't quite seen it because, well, you move through that rotunda area pretty quick, and a lot of people are moving quickly through, and so you're only going to capture what is probably a couple of minutes out of more than 30 minutes of video. In fact, I heard there's total of 45 minutes that ended up being made for all. I think that includes the pre-show. It's a lot of video, but and good news, you're going to see something different probably every time you go. But again, you go through quickly, and it's a luck of the draw what you get. Then you come into the next hallway, which has a host of memorabilia on display. Many are instruments, some are costumes, Miss Piggy. One senses a lot of heritage. Something that gives you a backdrop of Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. Then you go into a hallway corridor. This is where you are joined up by those with lightning lanes. There is also I think this is also where, or somewhere in here, that those doing single riders join up, but you're missing the first part, which is the best part of the pre-show, or best part of the queue. At any rate, you join up in this area. In this section, you see a lot of vinyl covers and shots of the Muppets over the years. It's like you saw the rock and roll when the Aerosmith years, but this is all Muppets, right? One vinyl has Sam Eagle in the center with text around the side saying, G-Force Records proudly presents a global musical spectacular. Sam Eagle, a tribute to national anthems, but mostly America. And so you get a sense of the humor in all this and so forth. From there, we end up heading into the pre-show, which is set up as our visiting. We are like a VIP tour coming in, only to find out that the Electric Mayhem is still in the studio recording when they should have been at the concert venue sometime earlier. The solution to all this is Dr. Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker from Muppet Labs have invented a lengthy immediate object motion, or acronym LIMO or LIMO, or limousine, that will get us there and get us there quick. Here's some nice insights from that pre-show. When you are standing in front of this, you'll remember that there was actually a recording studio, and then behind it originally was a window to a video that showed the producer or editor and Aerosmith kind of looking and listening to what they had been recording. If you remember, someone would come in and grab the guitar out of that stage and then bring it over to the mixing room. Now the scene is flipped around. You are actually in the mixing room looking out into the studio. The Muppets are on video in the studio. In the foreground is the mixing with Scooter on one side as a puppet animatronic, and two of the penguins from the show now working the board. And everything actually is much more proximate. You're very close to Scooter and the penguins through the glass. And so that's kind of cool. The plot is parallel to the original Aerosmith. We're late. We got to get a limo. We got to get to the concert, right? I love little details in there. There's pizza Rizzo boxes laying around on the side. There's fish on ice between the two penguins that are at the board. There's a rush of studio personnel that head to the show's kind of similar to the start of the original Muppet Vision, where let's have the orchestra come in first. It's that kind of the same thing. Um, yeah, the good and bad is that I found myself. I was kind of glad I was kind of in the back end because I wanted to be able to linger and film after it was over. But the pre-show started well in before I got in there, and honestly, most had left before the whole thing had ended. So you kind of, if you want to see it all, you may want to figure out how to get in there first and then stay after everybody leaves. At any rate, you then move into a next hallway where there's an Employee of the Month set of plaques, which is again similar to what you find in Muppet or Monsters Incorporated Laugh Floor, and with Goofy at Employee of the Month with over in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. At any rate, here we have Employee of the Month plaques, and Scooter seems to be the one who always gets it, right? Then it's followed by an Outstanding Lifetime Achievement G Award being given to Ken Marino, who, if you recall, was the actor or individual at the board in the original Aerosmith pre-show. If you recall, he wore sunglasses in that. And there's a whole story that I ought to share sometime about Aerosmith, who were pretty good sports about recording that video segment. But there was intense lighting to that thing because of the nature of how they wanted to create such a crisp image. They wanted to record the film quicker. So to do that, they had to have brighter lights. It's all a hot film thing. But the lights were bright and they were hot, and that's why Ken Marino had sunglasses. At any rate, he's acknowledged here, and he's being given an Outstanding Lifetime Achievement Award. From there, you go into the loading station. Looks very familiar. We do see that a lot of different props, many of them that seem to have come from the Muppet Vision Theater lobby. We also, as we get to the loading station, we see that Muppet Labs Automotive Division, with many of the props associated, to include even the Muppets Mobile Lab vehicle, the Dr. Bunsen burner and Beaker, Bunsen Honeydew, and Beaker used when they used to travel in that Living Character Initiative, and they kind of roamed through Epcot. You see a lot of different, there's so many little props and little things to take a look at and to kind of see as you go in there. By the way, by the time I got to the board to board the vehicles, I had waited 30 minutes in a 45-minute originally stated queue. So that was good. That was great. And most of that was, or half of that at least, was spent indoors. So I was glad for that. Then you get on the ride. And I have to say the ride, which had gone through the track had gone through some serious improvements a couple of years ago. It was a lot smoother than I remembered. Maybe it was because I was keeping my head back, which was a sign I really stood out when you got ready. They do the countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everything on the ride itself is pretty similar to what the Aerosmith experience was. You go past spotlights, you go past the Hollywood sign, you go past palm trees. The only difference is that they have been Muppetized to some degree or another, and I would say they seem brighter. It seems like a better use of black light paint than what I remember it from. It was quite enjoyable. It's never quite enough for me, but I am impressed by how visual what I did see was. And soon enough, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the roller coaster comes too quickly to an end. And as you come to the end, you hear the voices of Statler and Waldorf, our favorite critics. They are greeting you from a little trailer as you arrive for the concert. You can't quite see them in the long corridor as you're waiting for your vehicle to come up and park next. But you do hear their one-liners, and they're about 2 or 3 one-liners you'll hear in any one visit. I believe there are a lot more than that. So you're going to get a random assortment whenever you go on this. Whether any rate, it's a great little thing to have Statler and Waldorf. In my view, I think they would have been better from a window or something of that nature in the alleyway, because guests waiting in the alleyway could have heard Statler and Waldorf kind of make comments as you were kind of waiting there. So I think I would have probably done it there instead of at the end, but I was glad to see them in animatronic form doing their thing, and it was nice in that regard. By the way, you get off the attraction, you go into the first section, which has a screen of the concert, and you see a lot of stars that are singing along or somehow participating with the concert. So there's a lot of footage going on there as well. And then you see that you can scan your magic band to get a photo of what you experienced. You go into the gift shop. The gift shop is nice. It's well done. Although the portion that used to process photos for you and print out a photo, that section has been walled off. And all it is blue brick. I guess they assume people were kind of looking toward their right as they rounded the corner. There's nothing on that wall. That's kind of missing. But notwithstanding, the shop is smaller because of that. But they have a lot of great Muppet merchandise and so forth. And then you head down the ramp and you come back out in the courtyard. I treated myself I'm thinking this is good. I've really enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun. And I decided I'm going to treat myself to a churro drumstick, which had mixed berry sugar, raspberry sauce, and assorted sprinkles on it. It's supposed to have chocolate sauce. I didn't get that, and I didn't realize that till afterwards, but it was okay. And then there was a pond water limeade with green apples and boba pearls. I got to tell you, this is the best churro I have had in all of Walt Disney World. And you know how bad the churros are compared to Disneyland. So I was thrilled. This was a treat, and it tastes great. I love the raspberry sauce. Now, I have to, and by the way, the pond water limeade was also great. I enjoyed it. I love boba pearls. They're kind of fun to play with. You feel like a kid trying to pick them off through the ice. And it was a great treat at the end of this experience. I will tell you that churros are made over at on the other side of the park by Baseline, a tavern. They're made way over there in their kitchens over there, and then they're brought over to. There's about 4 places that do churros in the park, and usually the churros aren't good. You may want to ask if it's a fresh churro, but if you can get a good fresh one. And it was the beginning of the day. I assume I had fresh ones, at a fresh one, and it was delicious and wonderful. And I'm thrilled that I found a treat I really like at Disney's Hollywood Studios. So, at any rate, you can see all of this on my YouTube page, which you can find in the show notes or on DisneyInsights.com. In summary, I think the Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets actually is a hit. I enjoyed the ride for the first time in forever. It didn't have the Aerosmith, which I felt was so totally out of brand with Disney. It was an acknowledgement to Muppet fans that Imagineering not only heard them, but kind of understood them, got them, and sought to make it the best experience possible. I think it sets up people for a whole new era of Muppet fandom. Because honestly, you're not going to have a lot of old folks going through on that roller coaster. They're certainly not going to wade through the line just to see the queue. But you are going to have a lot of young folks, new folks, and they're going to be introduced to Muppets. And I think that's fantastic to it. The queue is a testament to the Muppets, which is far beyond what benefit Disney seems to have found in adding Grogu and Mandalorian to the Millennium Falcon attraction. This version of RNRC is better than the Aerosmith version, and it falls beautifully with more recent Imagineering efforts. like the revised Buzz Lightyear Astro Blaster Spin, the Country Bear Musical Jamboree, the revised Big Thunder Mountain, the new Evening Parade Disney Starlight, and the recent Soarin' Across America. Now I'm hoping and expecting and praying that the magic of Disney animation and eventually Muppets Incorporated Courtyard will be in the same category as well. Here's hoping, right? Well, in the meantime, if you want to visit Disney, hey, head out in September, see the magic of Disney animation. Head out in 27 to visit Muppet Courtyard. Would you go visit Zanola Travel? Again, link on our show notes page. Zanola Travel is going to help you set up your trip for success. It doesn't cost you anything for their services. It saves you enormous time getting all the details right. And it's going to set you up for a great Disney trip. So contact David and Leah Zanola and share with them your plans for your next Disney cruise, Disney vacation, whatever it might be. We've gone long, so let me just say, check out Disneyland Insights, my new contribution to the magic of Disneyland. It is the most mega multimedia resource on Disneyland, and it gives you insights to how you could take your organization to the next level and inspiration to how you want to show up as a leader and what that looks like for you. So check out Disneyland Insights, Inspiration, Ideas, and Magic for your organization. Also check out my books, which includes Disney, Leadership in You, The Wonderful World of Customer Service at Disney, and A Century of Powerful Disney Insights. Check them all out, plus other books. And know that, again, if you want to do more with your organization, reach out to me. Let's chat. Know that we can help support you in taking your organization to the next level. So, in the end, thanks for joining us for this podcast. Know that, as in the title of my organization, Performance Journeys, hey, it's as much about the journey as it is about performance. So find the second star to the right and keep going straight on till you reach it. Follow the compass of your heart and know that with a smile and a song, a little faith, effort, and pixie dust, your dreams can come true. After all, if we can dream it, we can do it. Until next time, bright suns, we'll see ya real soon.